Today's tutorial is my Ariel look from my Twisted Disney collection that I released last October. In that image from last year I used my own hair, but for the tutorial I decided to use a wig as I know not everybody has long hair that's easy to change or easy to style. The one I have here is by Powder Room D. This is their Red Mermaid lace front wig. It's 24 inches long and made of synthetic fibres. The hair is heat safe so it can be used with styling tools on a low to medium temperature. On the inside of the wig you can see it comes with a comb to secure it to your head, and although it is a one size fits all, it does come with adjustable straps. There are a few different notches so you can make it quite snug. The eye makeup and the face makeup for all of these characters are exactly the same, so I only filmed it once, which is in my Belle tutorial. So if you want to go check out that tutorial and see how to do the face makeup, then come back to see how the rest of the look comes together. For the lips, I'm going to be using Too Faced's Melted Matte Liquid Lipstick, and the shade I'm using is called Lady Balls. This is described as a true matte red. The key features of Ariel's look is her red hair, red eyebrows and red lips. The reason I've chosen this particular product is for its staying power. It's absolutely phenomenal at staying put even when you're drinking and eating. But obviously you can go for a gloss, you don't have to go for a matte finish, it's completely up to you. I chose this shade because it really matches the wig well. For the eyebrows I'm using Sugar Peel's Love Plus matte eyeshadow, and I'm mixing it with a small amount of brown eyebrow powder. The reason for doing this is it deepens that red slightly, but it also makes it more realistic as an eyebrow colour as opposed to using the vibrant red alone. I'm rounding off the front and the arch of the eyebrow and I'm extending the tail slightly. So the idea behind this look is that Ursula has ripped out Ariel's voice box. So I'm going to do quite a simple but effective ripped throat. I'm using witch hazel to cleanse the skin to remove any oils. To create the torn flesh I'm using Sculpt gel. Once set, this has great durability and flexibility, which is ideal for the neck. I mixed together equal parts of A and B and a slightly smaller measurement of C. Using my spatula, I'm swiping the product onto the throat, creating a horseshoe shape. Now obviously we're creating a fantasy wound, not something that's going to be realistic to what's actually in our throat. We're going to make it look as though there's bone that's exposed and snapped, but actually in the larynx area there's a mix of cartilage and bone, which are known as the hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage and the cricoid cartilage. So you are welcome to create those if you don't want to create the fantasy idea of the vertebrae being exposed. So I'm using my spatula like a butter knife and I'm keeping it on the angle, smearing the product into the neck so that we get one smooth edge, and then the inside edge is going to look as though it's the torn skin. So take your time going around all the edges, making sure you've got one nice completely smooth seam, then you can start building on the torn flesh. To do that you just want to take some more of the product and start building it up on the thicker edge. And I'm kind of using my spatula in a tapping motion, pulling the skin up and outwards, and this is going to give the edge a rough finish. Now as this product takes some time to set, you will need to keep manipulating it into shape because due to gravity it naturally wants to droop downwards, but you'll see once it starts to go off, it stops doing that and it holds its shape a lot more. So I'm just going round and continuing to rough up the edges. If you want to create large flaps of flesh that's been left over from being ripped, then feel free to get as creative as you like. At the bottom I'm going to start turning the product inwards on itself and then pushing the product upwards to attach to my throat, and this is all just about creating shape and texture. Moving on to create the illusion of bone, I've separated a cotton pad into two halves so it's not too thick, and then I'm ripping that into halves again. I've coated one half in latex and then I'm folding that into a vertebrae shape. Then I'm going to press that onto the base of the throat and repeat that same step with the second piece, and I'm placing them about a centimetre apart. I've then taken the other half of the cotton pad and I've made two smaller sections as though this vertebrae has been snapped. I'm now taking this maroon shade from my burn wheel and I'm going to cover the entire surface area of this wound using this shade. Don't worry about being too neat about this, we want it to look quite rough. This is just going to be a base colour. We're going to be going over this with black for added depth, and then we're also going to be going in with wound filler, and again none of this needs to be neat because we want it to look textured and uneven and as though there's lots of different factors going on the inside of this wound. Going back to my burn wheel, I'm taking the black shade and using that same brush I'm going to be painting this on the seams where the wall that we've built up in that horseshoe shape is. We want that to look quite dark and deep, and I'm also going to be applying it around the outside of the bone shapes that we've created. And you also want to concentrate some of that black between the snapped vertebrae. We want to make that area look absent. I'm using what's left on the bristles to coat some of the sculpt gel on the inside walls. As I'm using a duo fibre brush, I'm using the very tip of that brush to discolour the outside areas of the bones. We want them to look darker on the outer edges as though they carry on going round. Now don't worry if you get too much on your bones, you can always paint a bone colour on top and that will bring the colour back up. To make it look like some blood's rushed to the surface around the wound, we're going to apply some of that maroon shade just roughly and blend that in with your fingers. Again, don't be too neat about this part. We're going to be going over this with foundation anyway because we want it to look kind of muted and as though it's under the skin. I'm mixing together the yellow and flesh tone from the burn wheel and I'm applying that as highlights to the outer edge of the wound. As we're going to be applying a lot of liquid blood to the area, having these highlights underneath will look muted, but we need them to be quite bright to begin with so that we don't lose them under the blood. Adding some of the highlight to the textured area on the inside of the walls will make it look like tiny lumps of fat and flesh. I'm now going around the outside of the wound with my foundation, and we're going to take that over that maroon colour that we've applied around the wound. And as I said earlier, the reason for this is so that it looks as though the wound is sore and that the skin's obviously irritated. Now I'm going in with some wound filler. This is going to act like congealed thick blood. Again, don't be too neat about this, we want it to be textured and uneven so that we've got different levels of colour coming through. We've got some that are more pink, we've got the black, and then we've got that gloopy thick blood. I'm now going into my FX Skin Illustrator palette and I'm taking these two blood shades and I'm going to paint this around the very outer edges so that the skin where it's split looks freshly blooded. You can see that where we've got the mixture of the red that's quite bright and then that darker blood tone, it gives the wound a lot more depth and looks more realistic. I'm also dabbing some of that on the inside of the wound over the congealed blood and a small amount onto the bones. And then adding a slightly diluted version around the wound. Just use your finger to tap that in. Going in with a slightly yellower tone, I'm adding those highlights just around the outer edge. Again, these won't be too noticeable in terms of colour because we're going to be going over it with this liquid blood. This is the TV blood in dark, and using a fluffy brush, I'm pressing that over the entire wound. This is what's going to give it that fresh appearance. It makes it look more realistic and glossy. Before I do the splatter blood, I'm going to move on to the hair. With my wig, I've put it on a side parting and I'm pulling the fringe forward and I'm tucking that to the side and pinning it in place. Then I'm taking a fake starfish and I'm just pressing that into the hair. It's going to hide the hair clip, but it's also going to make the character look more recognisable as Ariel. For the finishing touch to the wound, I'm taking some splatter blood and I'm spraying that at the base of the wound so it drips down, but I'm also going to take some of the dark liquid blood and also apply that over the top. Again, feel free to go as gory with the blood as you like. I just use my finger to tap that around the wound to make it look more blooded. And that is how I created my Ariel look for the Velour Lashes Happily Never After Halloween pop-up event last year. That is all of the looks complete. If you've missed the other tutorials, feel free to click on my Halloween playlist or click either of these tutorials now. Please give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button in the middle if you haven't already done so. And don't forget you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Snapchat.